think they say, but when Paul was bitten by the snake and he was observed by the Maltese, and they had formed that opinion of him initially of being a bad person, and then that just basically evaporated over some time as well. So I think there's a connection possibly with how he was received by the guard.
Yep.
And
they decided he was a god, it says.
Well, yeah.
He's like, oh, not again. He's like, Paul's a god multiple times.
So it's been interpreted two different ways, or shown in a couple of different ways. There's probably more in there as well. I don't know.
I think the key thing again is that God speaks for himself. So Paul is following God's way, and God proved himself all the time. God proved that what Paul was saying was true. And the weird things that can't be explained, of having this viper attached to your hand and not dying because of it, God speaks for himself. And
also being oblivious that he's being what would you say, judged?
Yeah.
Judged in the process.
Yeah. But that even comes back, like in the Luke 10 passage of when you stay with people, when the disciples came back to Jesus the first time, they said, we walked on scorpions. There was nothing we could that could stop us. And I think there's the learning in this is that when God is the author of the mission, he speaks for himself, and there's nothing that can stop us. Obviously, there is a point in the story where Paul is stopped, but that's what we'll see soon. But I take away from this the same, that God speaks for himself, and if God's not speaking for himself, then maybe we're not following Jesus. So maybe we're not connecting into what he's saying. So one of the mentors said, if our testimony is boring, then perhaps we're not trusting Jesus. We're not stepping out in trust where he's called. So, I find, it's in that unknown, it's in the vulnerability, in the mess, that when we step out in trust and we see God show up, that God proves himself to us, and it builds our faith, but it builds other people's faith. Everyone gets caught up in it. Like, we've all got testimonies of how these weird things are happening, and it just gives us a stronger sense that God is working, and if we keep doing what he says, then we know that even more people will come under the influence of the gospel. I know when when we started back at school a few weeks ago, all the kids that we've been visiting throughout the break, that the school had asked us to visit, and then people that we chose to connect with, all of them went back to school, and they were fearing that they wouldn't go back to school. And the principal even made the comment, you guys have some kind of mysterious power about yourself, you know what I mean? And we're just like, well, we're doing what God wants, you know what I mean? And I think it's a similar kind of thing. Like, people see, they notice that something's different. What is it about these people? And then over time, they have to make their mind up, like the Roman soldier, or they have to decide, what is it that I believe? Who am I going to trust? And the joy of, so just to stand up the front and teach someone these studies is nice, but it's not until we are journeying alongside people in the mess that the reality of it kicks in. And it's worth following then, isn't it? Because you're like, whoa, I want to be part of this story. Because we can read this story tonight and go, oh, that's nice. But unless we're part of that story, it's just, matter of fact.
Mm.
But there's also, from what I understand, I know definitely in northeast Victoria, but I think here as well, some of the most fiercest storms we have are from the north, like northeasterlies. Like, just as I don't know whether it's the same, around the country, but that was identified with that almost immediately, sort of hearing that bit, but connecting straight away. And it's about that, I suppose, that connection as well. And I mean, whilst I don't know how many of us have been on a boat in that situation, We have been in situations where we're completely under fire, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot at stake. And I think to control or to be aware of, or be mindful of where you are and your breathing and all the rest of it comes into play. But you get to see so much more. You get to witness so much more in those encounters. And I'm not suggesting and picks a fight to be involved in or something along those lines, but it's just interesting how sometimes in those situations, the ability to see has to be developed. And I think it's a very strong message and a very strong process.
Yeah. Well, the next chapter is about the extremophile, like the idea of being an extreme follower. But I think we also have to be mindful that Paul didn't start at this point. He started at the beginning. He was, and he's gone on a faith journey that every step he's taken, it's made him stronger. It's made him trust even more. God has proven all the time that he's right, that he's right where God wants him. So he's learning to be bold and stand up and step out. So it's a process. And I think, all of us on that discipleship journey, as we step out in trust, the more we step out, the more we see God, the stronger we'll be in our faith journey. So, yeah. All right. Anything else that stood out? What about when they got to Paul? And not to Paul, sorry, to Malta, and Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us and treated us kindly for 3 days. As it happened, Publius's father was ill with fever and dysentery. Paul went in and prayed for him, and laying his hands on him, he healed him. Then all the other sick people on the island came and were healed. As a result, we were showered with honours. And when the time came to sail, people supplied us with everything we would need for the trip. What does that remind you of?
Jesus.
Jesus?
Well, they're 3 months, so they can heal a lot of people in 3 months before they went back to sea. So they wintered over there.
Yeah. So what else happened though? So Publius Yeah, what an unfortunate name. Yeah. I bet he had short curly hair.
What was Publius to the people, to the community?
The chief official of the island. So the governor of the island. And then, Publius had a father who was ill. So what would that, so you've got the governor of the region or the governor of the island, and we do him a really big favour. What does that do for the gospel?
In one sense, it fast tracks it.
Yeah. So
trust is built pretty quick when you've let somebody into your home and they've healed them.
yeah. So Publius, what would be his title when it comes to like Luke chapter 10? Who is
A person of peace.
Yeah, a person of peace, a seeker. And so a strategic person that God has prepared who paves the way for the kingdom to expand. Oh, yeah. So the chief official. Yeah. And then, so what else happens when your father is healed? What does it do for Publius?
He couldn't do enough for them after that.
Because
Yeah.
if you go and do something for somebody, then it rubs off on them, and then they want to do something for you.
Right.
And that's what happened there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Martha must have been very hospitable to feed 270 odd people.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, that's not chicken feed, is it? For 3 months.
Yeah. A lot of food.
Cold and rainy, so they built a fire as well. So they were very hospitable. Do you think they were hospitable because of Paul, or do you think they were hospitable because it was the Roman Empire's boat?
No, I think they were just that kind of people.
Right.
I mean, some tribes are hospitable and others will put this, spears down and don't you come any further, sort of.
Right.
So this one was,
Mm.
just strangers.
So the same advice, if they're seekers of peace or people of peace, you stay with them and you eat and drink what they give you,
Mm.
and then heal the sick, heal those around you.
Mm.
See, the boat was not on shore, so they wouldn't have. There's nothing identifying. So what they're seeing is people in distress and need,
Right.
and they're accommodating.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So they're acting out of compassion and love.
Yeah. And they wouldn't have been coming to shore with weapons or anything because they were coming off the ship swimming. They'd swum from the boat. Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those swords would have been, what, 10, maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 kilos each.
Yeah, they wouldn't have carried them across.
A bit hard to swim with.
Not worth it.
Yeah.
So God created a scenario where they were vulnerable.
Mm.
God created it, and then God had sent them to people he had prepared, which is reinforcing the Luke 10 passage again. And then people who, as you said, were open to and wanting to help. And I often think there's so many people that say, we want to help on the outreach van, we want to help in something, we want to do something. And it's like staying with those people, those people that want to help. But then those that have the genuine motivation, because there are those that want to help because they want to look good, or those that want to help because they want to, be in favour with the power broker or something, or the relationship benefits them for some reason. But there was no benefit here, was there? There was like, I'm either going to help them or these people are got nothing. So yeah, it's a great example of the discipleship movement is created by God. In the vulnerability of Paul going, God created that whole scenario.
Mm.
Shipwrecked them. God allowed them to be shipwrecked, and out of that vulnerability, sent them to people of peace. And I think for me, that's a testimony reinforcing my experience too, is that often we just trust in God and stuff happens, and then in that mess, God shows up and does something.
Well, with that storm, they didn't know where they were going to end up. And they ended up in a place where eventually that they helped each other, really.
Yeah.
And then a lot of those people might have died if Paul hadn't have been there and to do the work that he did.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we never know where we're going. Lots of times, we're just on the ocean getting pushed along, and where we end up is where we can do some good.
If we stop worrying about where we think we could have been going to, and we just accept where we are,
If even all we have is a plank to hold on to, it's all that's left. He's a wreck to start.
Yeah, that's a good thought, because a lot of people are thinking we could have been over there or whatever, but God has placed them there to do something, even though they might not have known what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
But even to know that God has already prepared people in that place for the kingdom to go through them. So even though it was a disaster, God had already gone ahead of them and had prepared the hearts of the people that were there. So as BJ and Bethany head off to their place, wherever they go, we know that God has already prepared people in that community to meet, knowing full well that the kingdom is going to expand through them. So and it's the same for all of us. Where we are, God is preparing people's hearts, people who are seeking Him and wanting to do good, wanting to make a difference, wanting meaning in their life. Excellent. So, Jesus equipped His disciples to enter new places, outlining 3 simple steps for evangelism. Eat the food of those you meet. Listen to their story is step 1. Step 2, heal them as you share your story. And that's the bridge to sharing God's story, the good news of the kingdom. Now, the healing bit can be a bit vague, can't it? What's the healing part?
A listening ear.
Yeah,
That's the main thing.
a listening ear.
Mm.
What is healing then?
When you share something with a person, it's doubly shared, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they might have been carrying it with themselves for years, and then they get somebody to talk to, and then they could have a different outlook on life.
Yeah. We were trying to articulate this the other day, trying to explain what we do, and kind of one of the things we came up to was it's a connection of the heart. So when you're listening to someone or you're healing someone by that type of encounter, it's a heart connection, isn't it? Where you've actually emotionally connected with someone, as well as there's a spiritual reality there, but there's an emotional connection, which means there's a love that forms and an interest to want to know more, isn't there? There's like this. And if you're a seeker, then that's going to fan the seeking, isn't it? So, yeah, by us having that heart connection to the seekers of peace, then it's going to drive them even more to want to know about, Jesus. And so I think I was talking about Mel's story. So Mel is a lady in our community whose life has changed, and we were talking to her the other day about. She said, "Fate brought us together," and we're like, "Yep, it was something out of this world brought us together, wasn't it? Surely something that was strange made all these people join." And we're like, we actually think it's like Jesus. And she's like, "I'm not too sure where I sit on that." Like, she's still working that out, but she's seeking. And
That was a great moment.
so after 3 years of her connecting in, she's now thinking that, well, maybe there's something in this story. And I think that's that same example of the shipwreck, a lot longer in time. But, in that mess, people are seeing stuff that they can't refute is potentially serendipitous or mystical or synchronization or whatever people want to call it.
What comes to mind when you sort of say that? I mean, I totally is back to when Jesus says, give a man a fish and feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. It's almost like people have to experience these things in order to have that sort of that depth, that sustenance about it. You can tell someone something. You can say something to someone. You can draw as many connections as you like to their situation. However, if they don't have those receiving those receptors
Yeah.
through their experience, the connection can't be made, and therefore, that's what came to mind while you were talking.
That's brilliant, because that's actually probably the actual heart of it, isn't it? That's the key part of it. And you can't actually do that with lots of people.
Well,
Can you?
it's
Because you need to have that genuine connection in someone to have that experience happen
you may not be able to do it with lots of people in one sitting,
in one sitting. Yeah,
but eventually.
yeah. But I think that's where the movement part comes.
Yeah.
If we have one group of people that start to follow Jesus and they're internally motivated, which may take a long time or it might happen quickly, then can potentially carry that on.
We'll see things like COVID and things that happen to a lot of people, like hardship that happens to a lot of people at once, can accelerate the process. But being patient about where an individual person is in their life's journey is also another thing to keep in mind.
Waiting.
Yeah, but like I said, if everybody shares that experience with war or whatever, some form of hardship will be accelerated because we live together in those situations.
I mean, so many people say, I give to the Salvos because they were with my grandpa in the war. And my grandpa said that I have to keep on giving. So there's that emotional connection to the group of people because of something that was done back then. And I think that is something we can step into as well. But it could be anything, can't it?
Well, when you do look at it, I suppose what you can draw from this too is that the Salvation Army to this day is extremely closely connected to those people. That act of the people of Malta when these people were washed up on shore. They provided, in the time of crisis. They were calm. They did what they had to do, and there's, history reflects that. They have an outstanding track record for that.
It was interesting, the bit about the snake. He must be evil because he got bit by the snake. It's like when the Westerners first came to Australia, wasn't it? And they went, they must be evil because they worship the snake. There's a perception of.
But the other way as well, and this is something that I think everybody could be mindful of, is if initially you interpret someone as being godly,
yes,
and then find out the adverse.
Find out that they are a snake.
So,
great point.
It's the whole, it's I think it's
they waited.
Yeah,
they waited to see.
They had a healthy, healthy level of discernment and caution. And
that, if you listen to Mel's story, that's kind of what she's done too. Like she has been participating in this journey, but it's almost like she's waiting. The trust is building and building and building, and then they're seeing, are they who they say they are? Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, well, the snake, you don't want how it worked out. You don't want to jump into conclusion straight off.
No.
Because it went completely opposite. So he's the bad man and he's the best man.
Yeah.
So when we're talking to people on that, you always have a first impression, but you should always wait, because the same as that happened there.
Yeah. How long do you wait? I mean, you look at like Judas, you know what I mean? Jesus had him all the way along, didn't he?
Yeah.
Then right in the last minute, there's a sense that
it's hard to
get
around, isn't it?
It's hard, isn't it? How do you fully know that person is going to not betray you at the end, or not going to stab you in the back, or whatever it is? It's hard to know.
It's one of those things too, because if you look at Jesus, and if you trust in Jesus, the whole journey, I suppose, possibly the aspect is learning to trust and being confident to trust. Like if I put my faith in Jesus, then how am I going to interpret the next thing that happens? Is it going I'm going to think it's because I was betrayed, so and I actually, like, speaking with some people over the years and what have you, and you do find that if they have turned away from their faith or what have you, it's usually there is a common thread that it's because they felt betrayed or let down by Jesus and God. So it's sort of you sort of trust is a huge thing, and it's something that I think it binds everything that I think we do together. Yeah. And without it, then we have really no foundation. We have no foundation. We're on sand, so to speak. We're putting our foundations on sand. So, it's something that we really have to learn, I think, as people, as disciples, to be able to let ourselves go to be vulnerable, and whatever the consequences of that, or so be it, so to speak. I am vulnerable. I walk around vulnerable. Here's my heart, and it's on my sleeves. Yeah. But like I said, you've got a strong right hook to back it up. Yeah. So it's being vulnerable. Yeah. It's being open to to whatever may come. Yeah.
And to call out bad decisions along the way. Like, so I think of that scenario. They're like, "Oh, we need to go here," and Paul's like, "No, we don't need to go there." To actually stand to your guns. So if we know that something is not right or inside, we need to speak it out and say that. I mean, that's what happened in the end in our community with something that happened last year, and that was just, it was crazy.
If you break that down, it's like I trust that I'm not doing anything to offend. Or let's say, for example, in that situation, I'm not doing anything to offend, directly. Yeah. But I also have to be in a position that if something is making me uncomfortable, that I can speak of that being uncomfortable without feeling of being retributed or upsetting or shutting the person down that I'm actually referring to, or in that whatever situation. So it's a management of a relationship at that point.
Yeah, it's complex.
It's trusting that your intentions and that your agenda is being, as you're giving it, you're also receiving it.
But at the same time, in that mix, God is working.
Definitely.
So God proves, if we are actually trusting Jesus, then the proof will be in what comes out of it. The fruit that comes out of it.
How it develops.
Yeah. Brilliant. Excellent. Right. So that's why are these simple steps that we talked about before foundational to movement building? These steps of eating food, healing them, sharing God's story. Why do you think they're foundational?
Well, everybody does it. For a start, whether you believe in God or whether you don't.
They're a common shared thing, I think. Actually, it's something we have in common.
Everybody's got to eat, don't they?
Yeah. And everyone needs healing at some point, and everyone needs good news. And it's simple. Anyone can reproduce it. So Paul had completed the work in Syria, Sicilia, Cyprus, Lycia, Pisidia, Asia, Macedonia, and Achaia, which is Greece, from Jerusalem to Illyricum, and he ended his journey in an apartment in Rome. Why do you think Rome was so important to the Holy Spirit and Paul for God's kingdom movement?
Well, they would be the ones that were anti-God. Well and truly.
Yeah.
Because they said it was just like missionary going out the opposite direction. They came out with an army to everywhere and wanted to command those people to keep them down. They wasn't allowed to get up. They kept people down.
Right.
So he would have went to Rome to try and turn it around.
So Rome was not, obviously, as we know it now, it wasn't a Christian country. It was a purely pagan country. So what would that have made mission in that sense? Like,
well, Paul wrote all the letters to all the
churches, well, not churches, but countries.
Mm-hmm.
So he had influence on his letters that he wrote.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have wrote all them letters if he wasn't stuck in Rome,
Right.
because it took a fair while before he saw, you know, whoever charged him.
Yep. So he's producing resources while being in the cutting edge of ministry. He was in a brand new context. No temple of
No
God. No backup. Completely vulnerable in this cutting edge space, and he's providing tools to equip other believers in other churches.
Yeah.
That sounds good, doesn't it? Does that sound familiar?
Makes me think that people in the past weren't silly. You know, they could, you know, they were there to hear, to read those letters eventually. It's
And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? They're relevant for then, and they're relevant for today.
it's huge.
So where is the Spirit of God leading us for mission and multiplication? Well, I just laugh because I'm like, that's exactly what we're doing now, is producing a resource. Sitting in the cutting edge, trying to produce a resource to help other people see how and understand how we do.
What it is, I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about, particularly over the last week, it's like, it's almost another language or another form of communicating where, you know, I call it, like, I liken it to like the language of flowers. You know, something happens, or, you know, whether it be happy or sad, but you then provide flowers to that person, and you're speaking in another language, you're speaking on another level with someone by actually performing that action for them. And that's probably, you know, an obvious thing, but it's almost like it has another way of communicating it. It's sort of
the mystery of it all.
Yeah.
And the connection that comes from that mystery. Even like, so the listening to people, or people physically being healed, there's the unknown element to that, which is like God communicates through the unknown. And I think that's when it comes back to that Great Commission says, go and immerse people, or go and baptize people in the reality of God, and teach them to obey my commands. And I think the Great Commission is that, immersing people in this reality of education, which is, there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of order and justice that comes out of this reality. And then you're teaching them, okay, you see that, you experience this reality, now you got to do the same. You got to obey God's commands as well. So when you listen to Jesus and do what he says, this same weird stuff's going to start happening to you. And then we have to point people to that reality and say, what's God doing? What's he doing? What's he doing? So that we all, because he's prepared people of peace in our neighborhoods and your neighborhoods, and we just need to go and do the same. It's so simple, no, but it's not. So simple, but it's not. So Paul had shared his testimony in Jerusalem before a fundamentalist Jewish lynch mob, then before governors in the luxury of the Caesarean palace courts, and with the centurion Julius, he had boarded the ship as a common prisoner. But in the storms, Julius and the crew had come under his command. His authority with these men, hardened sailors, traders, soldiers, slaves, prisoners, as well as the pagan islanders, came from God, the one to whom he belonged and the one he served.
Where were they heading in the first place?
To Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And they ended up in Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they ended up in Rome eventually.
Yeah, but I mean, that day,
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was
the storm took them
weeks ago.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, they ended up being weeks in the boat, wasn't it? Like, it's
Because they're not very good boats, not like the liners you see.
must have been a big boat.
Yeah, I can't believe it. That
235 people.
there was that many.
It must have been a massive boat. Yeah. He was, this is an interesting point. He was not a do-good, do-nothing preacher. He was a bit harsh, isn't it? He shared from his experiences as a sailor. He encouraged in the midst of grave danger. He urged the men to eat, knowing they would need added strength for their struggles through the surf. He read the actions of the sailors prepared to abandon ship. He gathered firewood. In open, plain, common language, he talked about his relationship with his God, telling of the visit of his angel and the confidence he had in God's encouragement. He blessed the food for them to eat. He went to the room where Publius' father was sick, laid hands on him, and prayed for his healing. Movement leaders share their faith with abandon in all circumstances. The gospel is for all, and there is no situation too toxic or dangerous for the gospel of Jesus to be shared. No people too tough or rough, sophisticated or important, that they do not need him. Paul grasped these opportunities on his long journey to Rome. And that what came to mind just then was this morning at the primary school, and Bethany was there. We had this little boy that we've been journeying with for a long time. And we had this little moment where we're talking about how he was all scared of who he was, just what people thought about him. And we just had it, and I just said, do you know what I do? When I'm scared, I pray. And I'm like in the government school, in the corridor of government school, teaching this kid that what I do is I pray and have it out with God. And I just think in that scenario, we can't be afraid. If God is prompting us, no matter where we are, we need to be obedient to what he's saying for us. He protects us. He protects us. Because they also know that he trusts us a lot. So that's, it's good. So think about it. What's God saying to you? What's he saying to you? What's he saying to you, Camilla? Lights are out.
Yeah, lights are out.
Blake's on.
It's spreading the gospel.
Yeah.
Good news.
You must have so many opportunities, Camilla, where you are, and weird and wonderful situations that happen in that childcare place, or early learning centre. What's it called?
Yeah, Leopold Child and Family Centre.
Child and Family Centre, yeah. That's good. Great. What else? Anything else?
I think for me, what I take away from the passage is just about the fact that Paul was in the storm with them, but he was not afraid or deterred, and knew that God was guiding him to lead the people through that. So what does that mean for me when things aren't looking so great around me? What is God saying in that, and how do I journey with people through that? So it's good.
I think that's really good. But I think also to remember that this is the end of Paul's journey. So a lot of that insecurity and fear that he would have had been well and truly sorted out by this point. And I think, the lesson is that the more we trust as time goes on, the bolder we'll be. And in those dark scenarios, it will just shine so bright. Yeah, it's awesome. And who are we going to share this with? How are we going to share it?
Everyone and anyone we meet. I won't be telling everybody in Acts 27, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, right.
Just in the way that we live, in the way that we are with people.
Yeah.
You'd hope that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You probably say that, and then tomorrow there'll be a perfect example for you to say, actually, in Acts 27.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's right.
That's funny.
They were on a boat too.
You go, gee, you really know your Bible. You go, yep,
Yeah.
Acts 27. Yeah, everyone knows that. Everyone.
Yeah, when Paul was stranded on the island.
When Paul got shipwrecked.
We don't hear that story very often, though, do we?
No,
No.
About the viper biting the hand, and
no.
I think so. There's a cultural context there, isn't there? Like the viper obviously means something, and
Mm.
God and Paul doesn't know the customs probably, and he doesn't need to because God speaks for himself and then proves to those people that he's a good person.
Mm.
It's amazing. So yes, even when we upset people and offend people.
Said he had faith.
Mm.
Well, the angels were still talking to him, so
Great point.
yes,
He still had that ongoing relationship. Yeah.
like anybody stronger, that would.
Yeah, good. All right, thank you guys. Thank you for sharing. That was great. So the next week's the last one at the ranch. So we'll have a celebration. Bring some food next week. Everyone bring a plate of something on for
Sounds great.
Lovely.
actually we don't need like 10 plates of food. Maybe just not every just bring something. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need another 4 kilos to put on. Yeah. My COVID 4 kilos. Yeah. So, Carmela, do you reckon you'll be able to make it next Wednesday?
I think so. I'll let you know.
Yeah, otherwise we'll have this on as well, but I just think I have a feeling it's just going to be really annoying because it'll just keep dropping out because the ranch broadband is just as good as dial-up. It's very slow and there's nothing we can do about it yet. All right, anyone want to pray? And then we can head off.
Yep, God, thank you for scriptures. Thank you for speaking to us, and that in all circumstances you're in the mess with us, and that's great. We've got friends, and we've got the Spirit to guide every step. As we go out, bring to the forefront of our mind your presence, so that we too can remember Acts 27 in these situations that we face. Amen.
Amen. Great prayer. Thank you very much. Good. To see you tomorrow. And see you soon, Carmela.
Yeah.
You guys.
And have a good sleep.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll see you,
Bye.
see you soon. Just watch out for the solar panel. It's very bright. Look out. Look at that gold spot. Look, it's just getting. See you soon.